YouTube poops, anger, memes? You want it? It's yours, my friend, as long as you browse the internet.
Link the Face of Evil and Zelda the Wand of Gamelon have gotten quite a reputation over the years, frequently appearing on lists with the worst games ever. But are they really?
I may be old and ugly, but I still know a few tricks.
Hey, I'm Grumpmeister. I'm a speedrunner who's passionate about bad and obscure games, and if this interests you, you can find me playing these games at twitch.tv/Grumpmeister. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday and Sunday and have added the link in the description down below. This is the first episode in the series focusing on the bad, notorious and the obscure, and I'm diving headfirst into it by taking a look at these notorious CDI games. These games have gotten a lot of hate over the years. They have spawned numerous YouTube poops and they have been an incredibly easy target to make an angry video about. But let's take a step back and take a good look at these games. Are they really as bad as the internet is trying to make you believe? Or is there more that meets the eye? But before we're diving into the games themselves, I'm going to take you back to the past. To play the shitty games... Wait, no, I'm not doing that skit.
Squadala, we're off!
To start things off here, I'm mostly going to focus on the development of the games and not on the history of the CDI, because there's so much information available about that you could fill another video with that. Which may be something I will do down the line, so if this interests you, leave a comment down below. Most of the information regarding the development comes from an email correspondence between John Stepaniak and the late Zelda in preparation for 2 articles in the Retro Gamer magazine. During this back and forth, Zelda has been incredibly open about the development process and has given valuable insights, not just about these games, but gaming history as a whole. So let's get right into it. Back to 1991. Zelda just left Spinnaker Software as they had no plans to continue in the CDI development. At Spinnaker, Dale worked on games such as Laser Lords, Alice in Wonderland, Sargon Chest, and 4 games aimed at very young children. It was during this time that Dale already noticed hostility towards games coming from American interactive media. The top executives had backgrounds in fields other than gaming, such as college-level education games and film. So American interactive media didn't really believe in games, and Philips didn't believe the market of the CDI was with games. Because of this, a game like Laser Lords was given $700,000 in funding, while another launch title, like The Tour of the Smithsonian, was given over $1 million.
Sorry, Zelda. Not enough rubies. You'll have to wipe out a few more gorillas to get that.
This did not deter Dale, and after leaving Spinnaker Software, he revived his old company, Zeldaddicted Incorporated, and got most of the CDI team of Spinnaker Software to join him. During this time, Philips got the deal with Nintendo to license 5 characters. American Interactive Media took pitches from developers and eventually went for some of the bigger names that Nintendo had at the time. Dale pitched the idea to create 2 games, one starring Link, one starring Zelda. As the development budget of games was once again not high, he pitched to combine the funding of both games. The idea behind this was to maximize the quality and to create a single engine that both games would use. He managed to get around $600,000 per game, so totaling at $1.2 million. Now remember, this was 1991, where a US technical employee cost about $100,000 per year to support, through salary, taxes, office space and the like. So, with a low budget and a team of 10 people, consisting of 4 programmers, 1 audio engineer, 4 artists and a producer, Dale set out to create 2 ambitious CDI titles. But the budget was not the only limiting factor.
Look what has happened!
American Interactive Media was expecting a title that would stand out and utilize everything that the CDI was capable of doing. This includes full motion animation or video. As Dale was figuring out how to do all of this with the budget they received, he was put in touch with Igor Rasplov. Igor had been in the United States for 12 years, but he was interested in returning to St. Petersburg in Russia and build up a company that would provide services for American companies. And so he did, as a joint company to Dale's company, called Animation Magic. Eventually the companies would just roll with Animation Magic, which was the birth of the companies that made these games, among others such as Mutant Rampage Body Slam and I Am Mean. But they also took on animation jobs, like for Hotel Mario. For this project, Animation Magic found 6 people with some experience in 2D animation.
Look, I got a new job.
They brought them over to the United States, placed them in an apartment close to the office and supplied them with computers and scanners. The animators would work on animation paper, scan it into the computer, clean up the line and colors, and then transfer it over to the CDI. So to recap, Animation Magic was given $1.2 million to create 2 games that utilized every aspect of CDI. And to top it off, they were given a deadline. They had a little over 12 months to do all of this from scratch. This includes creating the engine and the tools required to develop the game. As you can imagine, this isn't exactly an optimal working condition.
I'm not afraid of you.
Ha! Then wait here until you are!
Now that you have an idea of how the development was given form, let's take a look at design. Animation Magic was given a lot of creative freedom. Perhaps too much? Animation Magic did run the design documents and sketches past Nintendo for approval, but Nintendo was only interested in the look of Link and Zelda. Up to this point, Link and Zelda weren't really given form yet, besides appearing on box covers, so Nintendo only really cared about whether Link and Zelda looked like, well, Link and Zelda. When the ideas were pitched and the development started, there were only 2 Zelda games that were released: The Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Besides those 2 games, the box art and the art in the booklets, Animation Magic was not given any source material by Nintendo. So, Nintendo only really cared about the design of Link and Zelda. But what about Philips? Philips just cared about the game looking good, and this is why the art direction was pushed towards the side-scrolling adventure that we know today. Philips just looked at the game visually, not from a gameplay perspective. The possibility that top-down gameplay would have been more fun wouldn't have affected Philips. It had to stand out and look visually appealing.
I wonder what happened to Link.
Oh, he was a 4 anyway.
Stop looking at yourself.
What happened?
A stressful period followed, and a little over 12 months later, the games were done. Upon release, the games were met with a mixed, but still generally positive reception. The graphics, music, and even animation was praised. The game did stand out. Obviously, some people were also disappointed. During the development of these games, Nintendo released 2 other games: Zelda: A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening. So the bar was raised. And Animation Magic isn't Nintendo. They didn't have the infrastructure or the experience that Nintendo has. But all things considered, with the time Animation Magic had, the budget they were given, the expectations Philips had, working on 2 games at once, on a platform that was pretty limited, they felt they did a pretty good job. And personally, I agree. These are very difficult circumstances to develop a game in, and I'm impressed they managed to release this in time at all.
Do you know what it means when you lose your last ruby? Now you work for me! Take him away!
Now that we know how the games were made, let's actually take a look at them. Both games start with an overworld map of the island you are on, be it Gamelon or Korodai. On this map, you can select the area you want to explore. When you're just starting out, there are 3 areas available. Each of these areas will open up a new area upon completion, and this chain of areas will eventually lead you to Ganon, or a useful item you need to defeat Ganon or progress in the final area. Generally, none of the initial levels are beatable upon first entry. This is where the exploration factor comes in. Each stage has specific obstacles, or enemies that require an item to deal with them. Let's use Link the Face of Evil as an example.
Ow! What are all those heads? These are the faces of evil. You must conquer each. I guess I'd better get going.
As mentioned, we start off with 3 areas: Nortinka, Goronu, and Crater Cove. None of these areas can be finished outright when you just start out. Nortinka is a frozen area where you can get snowballs from moblins that walk around the stage. When you progress far enough, you'll run into abominums, which can't be damaged with anything you have at this point. Next up, there's Crater Cove. This area contains the first sword upgrade, but also has 2 enemies that you'd want an item for. First up are the Goma. While you can kill them by hitting them 10 times with your sword, it's not ideal, especially when you just got into the game. Normally, you'd use a bomb to clear them out. And when you enter the cave, you'll encounter Fire Dyra, which will need a special item to be defeated. Lastly, there's Goronu. This stage is the first phase of evil and actually has a boss. But to progress casually, there's multiple obstacles. You will need a bomb to clear a path into the phase. You'll need a lantern and lamp oil to light up the dark room. And you'll likely need a rope to climb up to the final door. Then, when you make it all the way to the boss, you'll need a special item to beat him. Luckily, Goronu has the shop, so you have access to lamp oil, ropes, and bombs.
You want it?
No. I don't want it. I don't want it, Marshu.
Sorry, my friend.
I appreciate it, but no. You can just leave now. It's fine.
I come back.
Nice guy. So the solution here is rather obvious. You are able to get snowballs in Nortinka. These snowballs can be used on the Fire Dyra in Crater Cove, which will drop firestones. And then remembering the Abominum in Nortinka, that you couldn't damage before. Maybe these creatures in a frozen area can be damaged by firestones. Luckily they can, so you can progress up to the next area.
Wake up, Impa. We're going to Gamelon.
All right, dear. I'll get the Triforce of Wisdom.
Zelda the Wand of Gamelon is pretty similar. You would need a bomb to get through Aru Ainu, which will eventually reward you with the items you need to clear Sakado. And to clear Kobitan, you need multiple items from the store, which is also located in Sakado. Now, as someone who also speedruns these games, I want to point out that some enemies can be defeated by 10 hits of the sword, which is the preferred method for us. But when you're playing casually, going the intended way makes more sense and is less dangerous, which is what I'm focusing on here. So you don't have to bomb the Dodongo in Aru Ainu. But hey!
Great! I can't wait to bomb some Dodongos!
Speaking about bombs and progression, I do want to debunk something that is often mentioned in videos about these games. Early in Zelda the Wand of Gamelon, you'll encounter rocks blocking entrances to the next section of the area. And pretty much every video complains that you need to get 10 bombs to clear them out. While you can, it is not the intended route of doing so. When you play a game, you encounter an obstacle and using an item doesn't work. Your instinct is to find another item that does work. And the same is the case for these rocks. Your progress in 2 areas will be blocked, so you have 1 area left to explore. And that area contains...
A power glove! Great!
The power glove is exactly what you need to just destroy these rocks in 1 hit. That said, I'm not sure why they did allow players to destroy these rocks with 10 bombs, and this misconception wouldn't be there if they didn't allow it. It feels like this was kept in as a sort of Easter egg, where the developer would have been like, if the player just wants to destroy the rock that badly, they can do so. But in the end, it seems to have caused more confusion. I do understand the confusion more with Link the Face of Evil, as that game has 2 different colored rocks blocking your path. The light colored ones can be destroyed by a single bomb, while the dark colored ones needs the power glove, or 10 bombs if you really want to. But with the Wand of Gamelon, none of the rocks require a single bomb, and as such it makes sense to look for a different way. And with this misconception out of the way, how many bombs do you think you actually need within Zelda the Wand of Gamelon? Just a single one to clear out the blockade in Sakado. Or 2, if you want to bomb the Dodongo in Aru Ainu.
Your friend Link could eat 10 of these.
At least.
While these games are developed within the same engine, there are some design differences between them. As explained earlier, Link the Face of Evil has special items that can be obtained from enemies, like the snowballs and firestones. These are consumable items and are crucial in your progress through the game. The item upgrades are mostly done through small quests handed out by the Caridians that can be found in the areas, which is a nice touch. Zelda the Wand of Gamelon has more items just scattered around the areas. For instance, you can find the first sword upgrade just laying around in the attic, a lantern in an abandoned house, and the reflective shield just sitting in a ghost ship. However, the Wand of Gamelon seems to focus a bit more on the narrative, and during your progress you'll free the villagers from Sakado. They will then return to Sakado and aid you in various ways. So this means that, unlike in the Face of Evil, you can find keys that aren't used in the area you found them in. I think these small differences in style and design give each individual game their own personality and charm, and I appreciate that they've gone this way. Whether it was intentional, I don't know, but it works out.
Now you see me, now you don't.
During this video you've already seen quite a bit of footage of both games. One of the ways these games stand out is by the beautifully drawn art of Bob Dunleavy. Each background was hand-drawn and touched up with Painter and Photoshop. Pretty much every background also has some small animations in them to give them some life, like the waterfall at Sparefish Falls, the glowing of the lava flows, etc. These are absolutely stunning, and I feel like they still hold up pretty well nowadays. However, these are also the cause of a major annoyance players have with the game. Because it's all a coherent background, it is not clear where the player can jump or walk. I do understand this complaint. And at times you expect a platform to be a platform, while it's not. But as with most complaints, this is blown up a bit too much. You'll likely be doing a bit of trial and error throughout the game, but it's not like an area or a jump will be blocking you for too long. Unless you try to do a jump that actually requires you to use an item. Other than the backgrounds, the enemies and items look decently enough given the resources that were available. You may notice that the enemies have a lot of similarities to the enemies used in the Zelda cartoon and comics. They've portrayed Gomas as crabs, Dodongos as dinosaur-like rhinoceroses and the like. In that sense, while the designs may seem a bit outlandish at first, they stay pretty true to the materials available during development, which is commendable. Another obvious shortcoming is the frame rate of these games. While it's something you get accustomed to pretty quickly, it is still something I would love to have seen better. While a big part is caused by hardware limitations, CDI is capable of running at better frame rates than what we are presented with here.
Thanks. You saved me. That's the last time I'm going fishing. See you in Sakado.
Another aspect in which these games stand out is the soundtrack. It's not what you would expect from a Zelda game, but pretty much every track is a banger. Every area has a specific theme within their music, and progressing through different sections of the area will slightly alter the music. For instance, entering an igloo in Nortinka will change up the music to be a more whole version of the main track. The games make good use of the CD technology presented to them. They've also managed to get music and sound effects to play side by side, which is something not all CDI games manage to do. Because of this, some CDI games either have no music, like Zelda's Adventure, or no sound effects. I only have one concern with music, which is that the tracks are short and they cut off pretty abruptly. It makes sense in a way, because the track changes every time you enter a new section of the area, and it wasn't worth making longer tracks. But if you're just grinding rupees, you may run into a music loop that doesn't feel like a correct loop.
Here! Thanks.
We've covered most of these games by now, so let's go over the controls. While the normal movement controls make sense, the biggest issue that these games face is the lack of buttons on the CDI controller. The CDI controller generally only has 2 buttons, while the gamepads add a third button in the form of button 1 and 2 pressed at the same time. Even a NES controller has more options available with a select and start button next to the A and B. So as you may imagine, to make all actions available, decisions had to be made. This is an unpopular opinion, but having up to jump instead of a dedicated jump button seems fine for these games, and it seems to work. And it frees up some options. Using button 1 to attack makes sense as well. But then we get to button 2, which is everything. From entering doors, using items, and opening the pouch to select items. This causes issues while playing the games. For instance, if you want to use an item while you're in front of the door, or you want to enter a door, but we're a bit too far away and waste an item because of it. Or when you just want to grab an item you need to progress, like the bell, only to leave the room because you were in front of the door. I wish they would have used the 1+2 button in this game. Using 1+2 to interact with doors would have solved so many issues.
Oh my goodness, this is awful!
This does bring me to the part where I want to point out that the controllers you see people raging about are not controllers that I use for gaming. The CDI was a multimedia device, and not specifically a gaming console. So a lot of the controllers were remote styled for the other types of media. If you'd want to play games on the CDI, you wouldn't use them. Instead, you would use the 3-button controller, which is quite similar to the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive controller. Or the 4-button graphics controller, which is similar to the SNES controller and can actually be flipped around for left-handed players. I mean, I could just be angry that the game is uncontrollable because I'm playing on this roller controller, but it's not meant for that. So, looking at this ball and these buttons, you know what? I'll do that sometime. If you want to see that happen, make sure to check out Twitch in the description below.
I'd say your chances are 1,000,000 to none. But let's have fun, anyway.
We've basically gone through everything, but there's one more point to cover. The cutscenes. You all know them from the YouTube poops. And yes, they're bad. However, I find them the kind of bad to the point where they just become hilarious. I speedrun all cutscenes categories of these games and I just can't get enough of them. The characters move wildly, their proportions seem weird, and the scenes are just silly. But that is what makes them great. They have their own unique charm, and they are unlike anything you'd expect from a Zelda game. But back in the days when the games were released, these cutscenes were a pretty big thing. It was uncommon to have cutscenes like these in a game at that point, and it made it stand out. Having the cutscenes voiced in multiple languages was pretty unique as well, especially the Dutch version stands out. Really going all out with the effects and dialects. Up to the point where a dialect was so heavy that as a Dutch person I could not make out what the character was trying to tell me until replaying the game a few years ago. But looking back at them nowadays, it's fully understandable why they've become such an internet meme.
You've killed me!
Good.
So are these games the absolute worst games you'll ever encounter or play? Absolutely not. Are these games hidden gems that you have to play? Also no. They're fun in their own right, a relatively short experience, and definitely one of the better games on the CDI system. But because these games carry the Zelda legacy and have been rediscovered later on, they have been a source for negative videos and have gotten a bad reputation, a reputation that is unwarranted. If you have the chance to play the original games, go into them with an open mind and not with all the complaints you've read on the internet. You'll be pleasantly surprised. This is something I heard quite often from people who have done so. But I wouldn't suggest going out there to buy a CDI just for this, especially with the prices they go for nowadays. If you just want to experience the games, there's an easy way of doing so. Dobley, who is a CDI community member, has remade these games in GameMaker and added some quality of life changes to them. The games have since received a few updates from the community and even a randomizer. If you want to try them out, I've put a link in the description below. And better yet, Dobley is now working on a spiritual successor for these games, with their own unique characters in the same style. So that's definitely something to look forward to. I hope this video has been informative to you. With videos like this, I want to bring some more attention to games that are notorious, bad, or just obscure. If this is something you liked, make sure to press the thumbs up button and subscribe. It will really help the channel and I really appreciate it. I would also love to hear your opinion about the video, so make sure to drop a comment down below. As the closing words, I will use a quote from the late Zelda Sharon. This really resonated with me, and I hope it will give you some perspective as well. Every game has its story. Not just the story of the game, but the story of what the situation was in terms of how it was built, where it went, and what the different facets were. You know, in terms of timing, and money, and constraints from the hardware, and constraints from the publisher. So, you know, I have a lot of compassion and empathy for all the companies that get great games actually made and out the door.